Hello, hello, hello. It's your girl Olarike again today. How are you doing? I will be talking about the rebirth of Africa as a continent. I know a lot of you will be wondering why I am saying the rebirth. I am saying the rebirth because of what I newly discovered about the name that Africa bear. I know that a lot of countries in Africa had, witnessed colonization, in time past. And in a way, it has shaped how Africa has been viewed by people from the diaspora. It has changed how we identify who we are. It has changed a lot of dynamics on how we feel about ourselves. I am from that continent of Africa. Africa is this continent that is full of pride. Africa is this continent that is full of love. Africa is this continent that is full of joy. Africans would give regardless. Africa loves, diversity. We would always welcome people from other continents. I think in a way we are inquisitive. We love a little bit of difference. We love a little bit of change because I believe that because of the love that we have in our hearts, we find it very intriguing that there are other races that have a color that is very different from ours, that has a culture that is very different from our culture. So in that way, we find that interesting. So now, the rebirth of Africa as a continent, I believe, is very important because I found out that Africa as a continent was not originally called Africa. It was known by another name entirely. And we all know that there's power in what a name carries. And Africa as a continent is this continent that believes in context. We believe in originality. We believe that everything has a meaning and everything has a purpose. So even when you look at how we use the names that we give to ourselves, all our names have meaning. For example, I came from, Nigeria as a country. Even going by my name, Olarike, Ola means wealth. Rike means you see this and you care for this. And so many other names like that. You would never find an African person with a name that does not have meaning. Never. Every name has a meaning. And even when you put that aside and you look at, biblically from the Bible, that during the time of Abraham, Father Abraham, his name used to be Abraham. When his name was Abraham, he did not have a child to call his own. And Sarai, his wife at the time, did not have a child by Abraham. God had to change both of their names. God changed Abraham to Abraham, and he changed Sarai to Sarah. Not after that were they able to bear a child. So what this means is that spiritually, our name carries a meaning, even for God that created us to have to change Abraham's name and Sarai's name. That means there's power in what a name carries. So now imagine that a whole continent's name is changed because the colonizers, European colonizers, came to Africa and they changed everything. They changed it using nomenclature, using, names of location and all that. So for me, I feel the need as the child of the soil to bring this to light, because I know for a fact that a lot of people in Africa as a continent are not even aware of this. But I must say that information is power. If you don't know, you don't know. But when you know, there should be a change. So, I am going to be telling you about how Africa as a continent was colonized and how we were given a new name. Stay tuned and watch with me. European nations, driven by the spirit of modern colonization and a desire for settlement, turned Africa into a zone of influence, exploitation and occupation, and colonization during the 19th and early 20th centuries. Europe transitioned from a system of imperial states that had governed since Roman times to approximately the French Revolution. After bitter wars and conflicts among European peoples, kings, princes, and emperors, the Arabic nomenclature for Africa became widespread due to educational proliferation and the advancement of geographical and historical sciences, predominantly influenced by Western culture for centuries. The term came to represent North Africa, west of Egypt. In contrast, names for sub-Saharan Africa remain obscure or less known. Among these, Alkabulan stands out as the oldest indigenous name, perhaps signifying Garden of Eden or Mother of Mankind, and was utilized by various African peoples, including the Nubians, Moors, Numidians, Carthaginians, and Ethiopians. By the end of the 16th century, French geographer André Thivet wrote in 1575 in his work that the Arabs, Edomites, and Ethiopians used to call it Africa, whereas the Indians and Javanese, people of Java Island in Indonesia, named it Besikat due to the southern winds that blow there more than elsewhere. The term Alkabulan was current in the 17th century. Geographical and etymological writings of the French Dutch, with Louis Moreri, stated in his book that this part of the world is called Africa, named Africa by the Latins, Italians, Spaniards, English, and other European peoples, Ifriqiye by the Turks, Alkabulan by the Arabs, and Besikat by the Indians. The natives call it Africa or Afrique, while the Greeks named it Libya, then Africa. Other names were mentioned by European geographers during the Age of Discovery, compiled by Alfred Draper in his book, Description of Africa in 1676. This term continued to be used in contemporary periods, especially in literary works like Darwin's Affairs, Bowler's Heart, and in artistic expressions such as music and singing within the African Unity movement. Speculation suggests that the term stems from the Phoenician word Afar or Afar, meaning dust or desert, reflecting the Phoenicians' trade routes along the southern Mediterranean coast, which later influenced the Carthaginian naming of the region and its people. So we can see from that narrative what Africa used to be, the different meaning that the name carries, the different glory that the names carried. Africa carried the desert, a dry land, while Alkabulan carried mother of all mankind, Garden of Eden, which is what, Africa as a continent signifies, because Africa as a continent is a continent that is rich in minerals, it's rich in gold, it's rich in, petroleum, it's rich in so many ways. We have forestry. Africa as a continent is very wealthy. So it bothers me that a whole continent name is changed by colonizers who just came to steal, to kill, and to destroy, and to loot. They changed the narrative of a whole continent, all because of greed. So my point is, over the years, what are we waiting for? Africa as a continent. What are we waiting for? Why would we still continue to bear a name that colonizers gave us? Why would we still be bearing a name that God did not ordain? I think it is time to take back that power. It is time for Africa as a continent to take back the crown. It is time for us to reposition, the continent in a way that would be respected. So as far as I'm concerned, the power that a name carries spiritually is very important. We need to change the name Africa to Alkabulan, which is the name that it's originally called. So I am calling on every African leader, every organization that represents, Africa, to take this information and take it seriously. If Africa as a continent wants a way forward, I think the first thing that we need to do is to change our name. And surprisingly, everything would begin to align. And for Irish people, I know you might be thinking of why I am talking about Africa. I am talking about Africa because I know that we are all humans. I am talking about Africa because I know that Irish people can relate, because they have gone through colonization too. Because Irish people have been stripped of their language, and the whole continent of Africa has been stripped off. Their name has been stripped off, their glory. Yeah, Africa is doing good. We are improving every day, embracing diversity, embracing other people's culture. But I think at this point in time, we all have to agree that we have to start from the roots. Because if the roots is disconnected, how can it water, create that abundance that we really have? The resources we know we have, but we need to stand our ground now and start rebuilding Alkabulan, the name that God gave Africa originally. I believe that the name change will start the rebirth of, Africa as a continent. In my head, it's already Alkabulan, because when I call Alkabulan, And the fact that I know the meaning of it, it makes me proud of, where I come from. Imagine knowing that Africa is referred to as a dry place, a deserted place, which is what the colonizers wanted in the first place. That whole Africa is a continent that has a lot of resources, but they lack, organization. They lack the technical know-how of how to manage their resources, which is not true. Before the colonizers came, we had kingdoms, we had kings, we had emirs, and we were doing just fine before the Europeans came and, changed the narrative of what Africa used to be. And over the years, it is still telling on how we feel as people. Perhaps, which I'm very sure that if we change that name from Africa to Alkabulan, I believe that is a connection to God, because when God ordains something and there's a change spiritually, there would be a change in atmosphere. So we need to take our power back. Just like how I believe that, Ireland should take their power back by ensuring that we get our language back. It is important. Everybody has a language for a reason. A language is your identity. A language is your pride. Your language is your culture. So it is important that we get our power back. Saying that, I will just, talk a little bit about, Africa, and hoping that we would love ourselves more, hoping that we can bridge, that gap of inequality. I know that Africa as a continent, we are very rich in, mineral resources, in oil, in gold, in so many ways, in our culture, in our being, in how we are, we are very prideful and we're very grounded. We love, our continent. And it just, bothers me, because I know a lot of Africans, in as much as we are rich, in as much as, the whole world think we should be able to cater for our citizens. I believe that it is necessary for us to bridge that gap of inequality by encouraging diversity too. And I keep talking about diversity because I believe that when there are exchange programs and, people from Africa can come to Europe and people from Europe can go to Africa to just, work for a bit and learn from each other. There are so many things that I believe could be changed. Perhaps if we all go to our different continents and we learn and how to live, we take, important things back home to improve on how we live our lives. In organization that we lack in Africa, I think coming to Europe, and it's not just about coming to Europe, I think the government, the systems in Africa, or must I say Alkabulan, as a continent, should be open to change, especially in the way that we treat our citizens. I am going to use, Nigeria as an example because I know that our system is very capitalist in nature, just like America is capitalist in nature. I know for a fact that it's more of an individualized kind of system where everybody is, running helter-skelter to make ends meet. Everybody wants to be somebody, and everybody will do whatever to be somebody in life, to make sure that they can put food on their table, to make sure that they can afford, to hospital, to ensure that their health is okay, trying to work such that their children would have education, they would have food to eat. So, and then employment comes in and all that. But for me, as a person, I just believe that capitalist system works in such a way that it creates inequality. I think it creates a situation where there isn't a lot of wealthy people and there's more people that are poor. I, as a person that has lived in Ireland, and I know that, in Ireland we have a very good social welfare system. So, in a way, I believe that if we introduce our social welfare system in Africa as a whole, I think it's going to bridge that gap of inequality whereby every citizen is entitled to a decent living, whereby every citizen would have food on their table, whereby every citizen would have a house. It might not be a perfect picture, but I know for a fact that it's going to help, citizens in Africa to be able to think rationally, especially when it comes to politics. Because at the end of the day, as people, Africans want to live a decent life. And it bothers me that in as much as Africa as a continent has all that resources, why should citizens of Africa lack anything whatsoever? Because I know in the Arab countries, a lot of their citizens don't have to really stress for money or for food or for water or for education or for health, because their system is taking care of that, ensuring that their citizens are well catered for. So in that light, I am hoping that Africa as a continent would now look at or begin to think of a social welfare system that would ensure that the citizens are living well, that the citizens of Africa don't have to necessarily, be in a hurry to get out of the continent to seek greener pastures in other continents. If they have to do that, it will be on the basis of they want to, not because it's a do or die thing. So I believe that, after changing our names, there are so many things, that we can change in our system. Irrespective of what the colonizers have done, they have done what they have done. They have left us now. It is now our duty to ensure that our citizens are fine. It is now our duty to ensure that we are not controlling the system in such a way that it's coming from a place of self. It's coming up a place of, if I'm comfortable and others are not, what do I care? It is important that as a continent that we care for ourselves. So I just hope that, this message would get to people, would incite people, that it would incite, the government, the systems in Africa to take care of their citizens more. We've gone through enough. Maybe social welfare system is one thing that we should be looking at. In as much as we embrace capitalism, embracing social welfare system is a way of ensuring that the system is responsible for their citizens in some sort of way. And in a way, if you look at the advantage, people will be thinking rationally. People would have to adjust to some sort of discipline. There would be less theft in the country. Because when people are not hungry, there would be no need for them to do things that are out of place. There will be no need for people to steal. There will be no need for people to, have to lie because they want a better life. And on the good side of it, God will begin to bless our country more, because whatever our leaders are doing, whatever the system of Alkabulan is doing, will be certified by God. Because at the end of the day, if you want blessings, you have to do it right by God, do it right by the people to have that blessing. So in as much as we are clamoring to change that name back to Alkabulan, I think we should begin to think of changing the system altogether. So I believe having a capitalist system and having a social welfare system is very important, because in my own head, I think social welfare as a system signifies communism to me, because in that way it brings equity to a level. It might not be at a level at what people want, but for me, I think social welfare system is communism in action. So, if you like my content, press the like button, subscribe to my channel, and leave a comment. Tell me, what do you think? I'll talk to you soon. Bye.